Welcome to the first edition of Football Feedback, the newest show brought to you by SpinnableSports.com. So this show is going to focus on the NFL. Each and every week, we're going to break down each and every game. We're going to be looking at it a few different ways. We're going to compare the two teams in every matchup based on who has the better quarterback in the comparison, who has the better skill position players, and then who's better in the trenches, both on offensive and defensive line. After each matchup, we're going to list out the spreads as we see them at the time of record. We'll pick a winner both against the spread as well as money line, just straight up winner of the game. For those of you that are not familiar with the sports betting terminology, that is another thing this show will be getting into at some point. We'll kind of get into some general education content related to sports betting for anybody that's kind of looking to get into it and wants a little bit more information and wants to know how to navigate things. So I guess, now that the NFL season is here, what better time than to just dive right into it? Thursday night football tonight, season opener, Detroit Lions, Kansas City Chiefs, big matchup. Chiefs coming off the Super Bowl. Hopefully the Chiefs coming off a Super Bowl win, looking to repeat, but the challenges are amassing already. As many of you probably are aware, the best defensive player for the Chiefs and possibly in the entire NFL, not currently with the team. Contract disputes have Chris Jones sidelined and unlikely to play tonight and for the foreseeable future, really. So hopefully for Chiefs fans, they can get that sorted out. And then some scary news, Travis Kelce. It was originally reported hyperextended his knee. The latest reports I've seen are a bone bruise. He's listed as questionable, but I would be shocked if he plays tonight. No reason to risk re-injury or further injury to that knee just in the season opener. It's going to be a long one, and Chiefs are in it for the long haul. On the other side of the board, the Detroit Lions, they're coming into this season with all kinds of hype. Many people picking them to win the NFC North and maybe even make a bit of a run in the playoffs. Quarterback Jared Goff was very accurate last year and is looking to repeat the same. Getting some, when you talk about playmakers, the Lions have plenty. It'll be interesting to see if they can stay healthy and if they're able to utilize everybody on the field. But let me kind of go through the breakdown of the categories I mentioned for this matchup. So the Chiefs are favored by 4.5 points going into the game at time of record here. So when comparing the quarterbacks, I'm going to have to give the edge to the Chiefs. I mean, no brainer there. Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league, no questions asked. Skill positions, I mean, I could make an argument for either team, and so a push is a possible thing. Just so everybody knows, I will have pushes in some of these categories, but I'm actually going to give this edge to the Lions. Just if nothing else, I would have had it as a push, but with the Travis Kelce news coming out, I'm going to go ahead and give the edge to the Lions in this one. At the skill positions, now we can get into offensive and defensive line. Offensive line, definitely edge to the Chiefs. Now, for the defensive line, I would also give the edge to the Chiefs, and a big part of that is Chris Jones, who's not expected to play, but I think all in all, the Chiefs still probably have the better edge on defense, though Jones is the bigger factor. But with 3 out of those 4 categories leaning to the Chiefs, I am picking the Chiefs to win the game, and but I do believe it'll be a close game. And as far as the spread is concerned, I would take the points and go plus 4.5 with the Detroit line. On to the next matchup, we have the Carolina Panthers traveling to Atlanta to take on division rival Falcons. So in this matchup, the QB, I'm going to go ahead and just call that a push because Bryce Young, rookie, no experience, but top pick, so probably expected to do well. On the other side, I believe it is Desmond Ridder that'll be getting the start for the Atlanta Falcons. He does not have much NFL experience for us to rely on, so that's why I'm going to kind of go push. We don't really know what either of these guys are going to be, and time will tell. As far as the skill positions are concerned, edge goes to the Falcons. Falcons have a lot better talent on the edges than the Carolina Panthers, who are in a full rebuild and essentially traded away all their skill position talent over the recent few years. So, with that said, the Atlanta Falcons also are going to have the edge in the offensive line, but Carolina Panthers have the edge on the defensive line. So, Falcons are 3.5 point favorites, and I will be riding the Falcons and giving the points. So Falcons minus 3.5. Next up, we have the Houston Texans traveling to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. This one, again, is a no-brainer at the quarterback position. CJ Stroud, unproven rookie, first ever NFL start, going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Not ideal. Lamar Jackson, coming off his contract dispute, finally getting signed and getting loaded with weapons. So definitely quarterback favors Baltimore in this situation. Let me just go ahead and skip ahead a little bit here. Baltimore is going to have the edge in each and every one of these categories, as Houston is probably one of the worst three teams in the league right now. They're looking to get things put back together, but not going to be great. Baltimore is a 10-point favorite in this game. I normally avoid taking favorites when the spread is this high, but all signs point to Baltimore winning by 2 or more touchdowns, so I'm taking the Ravens and minus 10. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Browns. I will actually be in Cleveland for this game. As you might be able to tell here, I am a fan. So there might be a little bit of bias in my take here, but I'm going to try my best to, speak logically and then also put the spin on it from my own bias. As far as the quarterback category is concerned, I would totally give the edge to Joe Burrow, but it's still a question mark whether or not he's going to play. All signs seem to be indicating that he will, but nothing is official yet. So until that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and call this a push. We also don't really know what Deshaun Watson's going to look like. He did not look like the Deshaun Watson of old last year, but he only played in those 6 games to end the year, and he's looking to bounce back to his old form. I feel like he definitely has a chance to maybe not quite be what he was at his peak, but he could get a lot closer to it. The Browns added Elijah Moore at receiver, who's definitely going to help. Of course, you have Nick Chubb, who's going to help move things along. But anyway, back to the quarterbacks. I'm going to go ahead and call that a push because the uncertainty surrounding both. As far as the skill positions, this is going to go to the Cincinnati Bengals. I did almost think about going with a push, but let's be serious. The Bengals have 2 receivers that are every bit as good as the Browns' best receiver. And, I'm not even going to try to make an argument for whether it's Amari Cooper or Elijah Moore at this point. But neither of them are as good as Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. So if you want to include like running backs in the comparison, you have Mixon versus Chubb. I would give Chubb the edge, but those receivers have such an edge over the Browns receivers. Just go ahead and give it up to the Bengals. As far as O-line is concerned and D-line, edge goes to the Browns. The Browns' offensive line is one of the best in the league, top 5 for both rushing and passing categories, top 5 on both rush and pass, in my opinion. On the defensive side, the Browns had a good defensive line last year that's only gotten better with the addition of Zadarius Smith. So now you have Garrett and Smith. I know before we had the Garrett and Clowney combination that people really hyped up, but I feel like Clowney played well, but it was never quite what people thought it would be. We'll see if the Browns are able to reach those heights this year. A lot of, this will be the homer in me complaining, but the defense was nicked up a lot last year, a lot of injuries, and never really had the full unit together a ton. But, I feel like every team or a fan of any team would say, oh, well, if injuries were off, we would have won the Super Bowl. So I am aware of that. But I am going to go ahead and take the Browns and the points because the Bengals are actually favored on the road here by 2.5, which is pretty interesting and kind of tells me Burrow's going to play because if he wasn't, I would imagine that the Browns would be favored at this point. Next game we have is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to Indianapolis to play the Colts. Anthony Richardson's first start in the NFL. So these are 2 teams definitely in 2 different places. The Jaguars kind of overexceeded expectations last year, getting a nice win in the playoffs, especially a nice comeback win, embarrassing the Chargers. And what a win it was. I actually had the Jaguars and was in Vegas, and so that worked out well for me. Jaguars are 4.5 point favorites on the road against the Colts. As mentioned, these teams are in 2 different places. Jaguars are looking to win their division and potentially get one of the top seeds in the AFC. The Colts are looking to get 2 to 4 wins this season. So With that said, let's run through our categories. QB, edge definitely goes to the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. Anthony Richardson still kind of the jury's out. We'll see where that ends up, but edge definitely goes to Lawrence at this point. Skill position players also going to go to the Jaguars. You have Travis Etienne in the backfield, and then Calvin Ridley coming off the suspension. I think people are kind of sleeping on just how good Calvin Ridley could be and is likely to be. And then don't forget you have Zay Jones out there as well, edge to the Jaguars. The offensive line, I'm actually going to give the edge to the Colts here. I mean, neither offensive line is that great, but the Colts did show better last year, and they didn't do a ton to improve it, but I'm thinking that when it's all said and done, the offensive line in Indy is a little bit better than what's in Jacksonville right now. On the defensive side, Jaguars all day. The Colts are going to struggle to slow teams down. The Jaguars are going to be looking to win games with their defense. Not that, I mean, their offense is going to score a lot of points, but their defense is going to have the ability to shut some people down for sure. So I'm going to be taking the Jaguars minus 4.5. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to Minnesota to take on the Minnesota Vikings. This game's kind of tough to really think about. I mean, initially, I just automatically think, oh, Vikings all day. Like Tampa Bay in such a weird place since Tom Brady left. I mean, you still have Mike Evans. I don't really know the full status of the contract dispute. He kind of had a week one deadline that was like, hey, extend me or I'm leaving. But it seemed like it'd be I'm leaving after this year, so he's going to play either way. Um, Not sure. I assume he'll be a professional. He's going to try if he's out there. So if you're getting a full Mike Evans and you have Chris Godwin, uh, Baker Mayfield, not the best, obviously. He had some up and downs with the Browns. I actually was a Baker fan up until probably not. I got off the train eventually a little bit before they ended up moving him because the more and more you watched, it was just like he was fine but he was missing open guys. And anyway, he looked up and down in LA as well. So I would expect he'll be a little bit up and down with Tampa Bay. But with that said, he can throw the ball and he's got some weapons on the outside. But that team's had a lot of flux since, going all in for the win with Brady. And at this point, I really don't know what to make of them until they hit the field. But I could say the same for Minnesota because, they were so good last year in terms of wins, but so many of those were close one score games. And so how much did luck have to do with that? And then now you lose Dalvin Cook. You do have his lookalike and hopefully production mirror in terms of Alexander Madison. But Justin Jefferson obviously still there as well, and they added Jordan Addison, so a lot of skill position talent. And I guess that brings me to my categories. Quarterback, definitely going to go Kirk Cousins over Baker Mayfield, so edge to the Vikings. Skill position, Vikings again, though I do think it's closer than people think when you consider Evans and Godwin. O line and D line also both going to the Vikings. The Bucs have a lot of improvements to make in both areas. So with that said, the Vikings are a 5.5 point favorite, and I believe Minnesota both wins and covers the spread. Next up, we have Tennessee traveling to New Orleans, where the Titans will take on the Saints. So I actually think that the public perception of both these teams is a little off. I think people are overestimating the Titans and underestimating the Saints. I know it's easy to laugh at Derek Carr and like, oh, if you're so good, why didn't the Raiders want you? And why didn't you have all this great success there? And then on the flip side, Tennessee seems to be like the coaching factor. Everybody just assumes is enough. Give them the edge. Derrick Henry still there, solid, but the O line's gotten worse. And the Saints offense is just loaded with talent at the skill position. So the skill positions and quarterback edge is going to go to New Orleans, in my opinion. I'll take Derek Carr over Ryan Tannehill. I'm sure that's probably going to spark some debate or some people would feel differently, but I just think that Derek Carr has done the same, if not more, and proven it more than Tannehill. I know Tannehill had a couple of good years, but that was when he had an incredible run game and a solid shutdown defense to play with. So we'll see where that comes out. I'm taking the edge with New Orleans on the offensive line as well, though I will give Tennessee the edge on defense. In this game, the Saints are 3-point favorites. I believe the Saints both win and cover, so I'm taking New Orleans. In what I think will be one of the best games of week one, we have the San Francisco 49ers traveling to Pittsburgh to take on Kenny Pickett and the Steelers. I do believe that Kenny Pickett and the Steelers will be a little bit better than expected, maybe, although I do think that the public bias does favor Mike Tomlin. Everybody, the guy's never not gone 500, so that is impressive. But I think some people are down on the Steelers. I'm high on the AFC North. Maybe that is bias. I think all four teams have a realistic chance to make the playoffs, just depending how things shake out. Obviously, between injuries and unexpected NFL randomness, I doubt all four will make it, but I do expect three to make it. I'll get to that in my playoff predictions since we're here at the start of the season. But the Steelers are 2.5-point home underdogs. The 49ers given 2.5 on the road. Not a huge surprise considering the fact that the 49ers are considered to be one of the best teams in the NFC. The Steelers are expected to be more middle of the road. But let's go through our categories. So, quarterback, I'm actually going to call this one a push because, I believe Brock Purdy is going to play coming off the injury. He looked good in the limited time we saw him, but we'll see what he's able to put together this year. Kenny Pickett, like I already mentioned, I'm kind of high on him, so can't really give the edge to Purdy over Pickett at this point, so we'll call that a push. We're actually going to do the same for skill positions. The 49ers are loaded. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and I could name some more like George Kittle. But on the flip side, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth. So combined, both teams are pretty loaded at the skill positions. As far as in the trenches, though, I'm going to give the edge to San Francisco on both. Going to go ahead and say San Francisco has the better offensive line and defensive line. As mentioned, the 49ers are giving 2.5 points. So I do believe the 49ers win the game, but I would actually take the Steelers and getting the 2.5 points at home because I believe this will be kind of whoever has the ball last second field goal, something like a 2 to 3 point game. Obviously, 3 points I lose, 2 points I win, but hey, those are the razor thin margins that you operate on in the NFL betting world. So again, 49ers to win, Steelers to cover. Next up, we have what many consider to be the worst team in the NFL, myself included, and that is the Arizona Cardinals, traveling to Washington to take on the Commanders. Just a little side note on the Cardinals. They have quite possibly had the worst year to 2 year run in NFL history from a management perspective. So coming off a disappointing end of the season and embarrassing playoff loss, Cardinals management decided to extend both the head coach and the GM and also the quarterback. And then halfway through the following season, they punted on all three. They've since fired both the GM and the coach. Kyler Murray is currently out on the PUP list. And it seems like Cardinals are doing everything they can to tank and go ahead and take Caleb Williams. And so, what a dumpster fire. And now they're playing against who has probably been the worst run organization from an ownership standpoint in the last 10, 20 years. The Washington Commanders finally rid themselves of Dan Snyder. And I think the weight of that alone is enough to have Washington as a favorite in the NFC East. But a lot of people are sleeping on this roster as well. Sam Howell, not a common name. I did watch him a little bit in college as I'm a UNC fan. So I got to see a little bit there. He kind of honestly reminds me of Baker Mayfield. Both, I know they kind of look the same, but in just the way they play as well. But with that said, kind of like what I said about Baker earlier, can be good and can be bad. And I think one thing that Sam Howell's a little bit better at is he doesn't turn the ball over as much and doesn't make as many poor throws, or I guess high risk throws. So Washington has some weapons on the offense with Scary Terry, Brian Robinson in the backfield. All right, let's run through the categories. So quarterback, edge goes to Washington. I'll take Howell over whoever is even starting for the Cardinals. I'm not even sure. I know it's not Murray. Skill position, also edge to Washington. Offensive line, both of them stink, so I'm just going to give it a push. But on the defensive side, I'm also going to lean Washington. So the Commanders are 7-point favorites right now, and I believe Washington both wins and covers the spread. For our next game, we head to the NFC North, where we have the Green Bay Packers traveling to Chicago to take on Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. So in quarterback here, I'm going to go ahead and call the push. Fields is trying to prove himself and kind of showed a little bit of promise late last year. Jordan Love hasn't really seen the field enough to make judgment, so I'm going to go ahead and call the push, although somewhat slight lean towards Love, but we'll see. Just calling it a push for now. Skill position, I'm also going to call a push. Neither team is great, but they made improvements compared to last year, and so I would just call them equal there. The offensive line, I would give the edge to the Chicago Bears. Defensive line, we're going to give the edge to Green Bay. Bears right now are a 1-point favorite at home. I believe the Green Bay Packers win and cover, so I would take them +1. In an AFC West rivalry matchup, we have the Las Vegas Raiders going to Denver to take on Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton's in town, and everybody's wondering if he can get Russell Wilson back on track. Personally, I think Russell Wilson is toast, and so I don't think much will go well in Denver this year. So it shouldn't come as a shock that I'm leaning Raiders, even though many people are down on the Raiders as well. The Broncos are 3.5-point favorites at home to open the season, and I'm going to go ahead, like I said, take the Raiders. We can run through the different categories. Quarterback, I'll to give the edge to Garoppolo. I know there's some questions around his health as well, and he's injury prone, but as long as he's on the field, I'll take him over Wilson. Skill positions, I'll take Las Vegas Raiders all day. You have Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, and that alone is enough. Denver has some decent skill position, but in terms of offensive line, I'm going to give the edge to the Raiders. Defensive line, edge goes to the Broncos. All in all, I already kind of mentioned it. I'm taking the Raiders to win outright and cover the 3.5. Next up, we have a game that features two teams that many people think will be playing deep into the playoffs. We have the Miami Dolphins heading out west to take on the Los Angeles Chargers. So, battle of the quarterbacks here. You have Tua versus Justin Herbert, and both guys seem to be entering a year where it's kind of make it or break it, time to prove yourself. Herbert's gotten the benefit of the doubt more than Tua. Tua seems to have a lot of haters as far as, and rightfully so, if he can't stay healthy, that's going to be a problem. Herbert's starting to get the hate for people wondering, is this guy actually as good as everybody says, because the results aren't there. I mentioned the embarrassing loss the Chargers had to the Jaguars earlier. That doesn't help. And this year, it's kind of like a put up or shut up year, so we'll see what he's got. But with the two quarterbacks in the matchup, I'm going to call that a push. Like I said, Tua got to stay healthy. He's proven he can play well when he's on the field and available. Herbert also plays well. Sometimes it doesn't translate to team success, but he's fairly consistent in what he does. Skill positions, I'm going to give the edge to Miami here. I mean, between Hill and Waddle, is there a better duo wide receiver in the league? I don't think so. Miami's also going to have the edge for me in both the offensive and defensive line. So the Chargers are favored by 3 points at home, which is, in other words, essentially a push. But I'm going to take the Dolphins in 3 points. I think the Dolphins win outright. Next up, we have the Eagles traveling to New England to take on the Patriots. The Eagles are 4-point favorites on the road, and I like that action. I think New England's going to struggle. I mean, they do have a good defense, but let's just be serious. The Eagles lead in every other category: better quarterback, better skill position, better offensive line. I will call the defensive line a push because the Patriots do have a solid defense, but the Patriots are going to struggle to score points. something the Eagles have no problem doing. So I expect the Eagles to win big on the road to start the season. Next up in the NFC West, we have the LA Rams traveling to Seattle to take on the Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith looking to do it again this year. Matt Stafford coming off an injury. He will be without Cooper Kupp in this game, so just know that that is taken into consideration. Availability in my positional comparisons because, spoiler alert, Seattle has a better skill position. Even with Coop healthy, I think you can make the argument, but Coop's out, Jackson Smith and Jigba's out, but you still have Lockett and Metcalf. You have Kenneth Walker in the backfield. Edge goes to Seattle. I'm going to give the edge at quarterback to Seattle as well. You know, by midseason, Stafford may reassert himself as better than Geno Smith, but between age and attrition, I'm just going to say Geno's probably going to have a better season this year than Stafford. So edge goes to Seattle. Offensive line edge is also going to be with Seattle. Run blocking and pass blocking is both better than what the Rams have. But defensive line, of course, Aaron Donald, edge is going to go to the Rams. With all that being said, the Seahawks are 5.5 point favorites at home, and I believe they win and cover the spread. So I will take the Seahawks minus 5.5. Time to get to Sunday Night Football. The Dallas Cowboys traveling to New York to take on division rival Giants. Daniel Jones versus Dak Prescott. And so this will be one of the few matchups this season where I actually favor Dak Prescott in the quarterback comparison. Daniel Jones is pretty solid as himself, but I mean, both of these guys are middle of the road average, 12 to 16, however you want to rank them at any given time. I don't really know if I'll end the season feeling this way because Dak is slowly each and every season lost a little bit of credibility with me. He just hasn't played as well as people expected. So we'll see. But edge goes to Dallas there. The edge will go to Dallas in skill positions as well. Offensive line, I'm going to go ahead and call that a push. Both teams could improve. Both were ranked in the 20s last year. I don't expect much improvement, maybe into the mid-teens. Defensively, though, Dallas does have a significant edge there. That's why I'm leaning Cowboys to win the game and cover the spread. They are 3 point favorites at home. So Dallas opens the game -3. I will take the Cowboys to win and cover. Monday Night Football. What a matchup. We have the Buffalo Bills and the new look New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, prime time to start the season, taking on division rival, two teams that expect to be fighting for a top seed in the AFC. Let's dive right into our positional comparisons. So at the quarterback position, I feel like the majority would probably lean Buffalo with Josh Allen, but I'm actually not off on Allen, but I'm pulling back. Like to me, there's Mahomes. Everyone always says, "Oh, it's Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, or whatever order you want. Those are the top three." To me, you have Mahomes, Burrow, and then everybody else, like Allen being part of that. Everybody else. So I think the offensive line isn't that good, so they're going to struggle. But quarterback position, I'm going to give the edge to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, I think, he's definitely older and not quite what he used to be, but I think the team and the situation plus the refresh from the change of scenery, Rodgers is going to be balling. And he's got plenty of people at the skill positions. Same is true for the Bills, but I do think the Jets are set up a bit better and a bit deeper at the skill positions. And so I'll give the edge to the Jets there. Offensive line, already mentioned. Bills not great, Jets not great either. So I will call it a push. And then defensive line, the edge will go to the Jets. So the Bills are 2 point favorites on the road in New York, but I believe the Jets win outright and cover +2. All right, let's get into some playoff predictions. Start with the NFC. I believe the 4 division winners will include the Philadelphia Eagles, the San Francisco 49ers, the Detroit Lions, and the New Orleans Saints, with your 3 wildcard teams including the Washington Commanders, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Dallas Cowboys. On the AFC, I believe you'll have Kansas City, Jacksonville, Cleveland, and Miami as your division winners, and your three wildcard teams will include Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Buffalo. So we went through and picked every game so far, but let's go ahead and give you the five best picks or the five weekend winners that we're going to see here. So, as someone who enjoys betting on sports a lot, there's one rule that I've employed on myself, and that is do not bet on Thursday night football. I have no feel for Thursday night football. I don't know if it's just the short week of practices or what, but a lot of anomalies happen. Lines are weird. Just I'm avoiding it at all costs this year. So my five weekend winners will always come from games that will be happening on the weekend, or perhaps Monday night, but more likely the weekend. So the five bets I like most against the spread this week are the Browns plus 2.5 at home, the Vikings minus 5.5, the Commanders -7, the Packers +1, and the Eagles -4. Those are your five weekend winners. Well, that's all I've got for week one. Excited to get the NFL season started and looking forward to doing this each and every week.